Welcome to I Have Some Questions. The show is all about asking questions our guests have never asked themselves before, never thought about, or been too afraid to explore. It's designed to uncover the human story at the root of successes and failures and help us as an audience learn and grow from that story. My hope is that you'll hear brilliant guests exploring new ideas and challenging themselves in new ways of thinking. I think this makes for great conversations. I'm going to bring on entrepreneurs, authors, coaches, scientists, and frankly, any vein of super interesting, successful, and passionate human I can find. I am fascinated by passionate people, and I have some questions for them. I'm Erik Berglund, and I hope you'll join me every week for new episodes. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Erik Berglund, and my guest today is Ann Rivera. Ann is a performance coach, and she came about this profession in the most authentic way possible. She was a high-performing athlete that has an amazing origin story I think you're really going to enjoy. And she took the time to reflect on the processes and systems and mindset that led her to success and has used that now to transform entire organizations and cultures into high-performing entities. She takes the lessons that she's learned in athletics, that she still coaches high-performing athletic teams in the pros and in college, and translated them through business acumen into something that is tangible and approachable and impactful for business leaders and professionals. I love this conversation with Ann. Her energy and enthusiasm and authenticity carries well, and I hope you'll take the time to give it a listen. Please welcome Ann Rivera. And when we first met, you have so much passion for your ability to connect the dots of what you learned in professional sports and in educating athletes and training high performers into the business world. And I want to go into all of that. And despite me doing an intro before this, I don't think I've given the audience enough to really understand why you carry so much passion and competence in this particular arena. Could you take a minute maybe and just catch them up on your career and what led you to this point where you have such a big impact on business owners from the lessons that you learned in high performance athletics?
I think it's interesting when I look back on my own journey, I can see that it's almost in my DNA, like how I show up, whether that was in high school, on teams, sports teams, the drive and the ambition and the passion and the playfulness that I've always had has just been the threads that have run through my career, no matter what I'm doing. So whether I was a professional athlete as a volleyball player, and that was like pursuing teams in Europe on my own. So I did it in an unprecedented way. In the late 90s, when I graduated from college, I traveled by myself and was my own agent.
Wow.
Because I couldn't get an agent to represent me because I was a small athlete. Right. As a volleyball player, I was 5'9". And back then, even, if you watch some of the high level volleyball games right now, right now we're in the season of the national championships of fall volleyball. You see those girls out there, they are big. And
what would like an average height be of a team that's competing in that level? What's the average height?
I would say about 6'2" up, but then you have defenders that are smaller players that can be in the back row and only do their role in the back row. But back then there was no libero. There was no positions that were locked in just for smaller players. So I was a smaller player. I was on the borderline, but I didn't really get to play my senior year. And I had been invested in volleyball my whole life. And I knew that I had something big within me, that I was not ready to put out the fire and step into the real world right after college. So instead, I traveled by myself, and this is pre-internet, really. I mean, they had internet, but people didn't have email addresses. Only some people. They didn't have websites.
You weren't emailing people fan-recorded clips of your performance that your mom shot in the stands on her iPhone. Like, none of that. There's layers of technology that create a wildly different world today than it would have been back then for scouting talent.
Exactly. And so I would say this is like a signature time of my life that really defines who I am. Like when I look back, I'm like, what in the world? Like, how did I make this happen? Because I had written over 100 letters because then you had to snail mail things.
Sure. Yeah.
So I had tracked down the elusive list of volleyball teams that had pro players, or like that took pro players in Europe. And so it was this very hard to get list. And I finally got a photocopy of it, and it had the addresses and the coaches' names for Belgium, for France, for Italy, for Germany, for Switzerland, for, like Romania, for like all these different countries. And I went to Pepperdine University in California, and I took it to the language department, to the different languages professors, and had it translated. And so then I wrote it out, translated, and sent those to 100 different teams, wow, pretending to be my agent.
Fantastic.
I was a PR major. I didn't want to go into PR, but I was like, well, I know one thing that I can represent and promote, me.
There is so much to, so you're in college.
Senior in college.
And you want to keep going in volleyball, but due to your height and recruiting limitations with technology and visibility, you weren't on the radar of those teams that you would have maybe found naturally in the ecosystem. And so what I hear in your journey there is, this is where your entrepreneurship starts. Like, this is entrepreneurship, right? You took something nobody else knew was valuable, at least not appropriately so, and brought it to the market and had to learn a bunch of skills you otherwise would have preferred to not have in order to monetize the product that was ultimately your volleyball performance. Like, that is entrepreneurship just wrapped in a package of
at the core. At the core.
Where did that come from? Like, that had to take an enormous amount of, someone used this word on my podcast recently, gumption. That had to take an enormous amount of gumption. Where did that stem from?
Well, I think the main force was fear.
Oh.
Yeah.
Elaborate.
I did not, I had put all my eggs in one basket. I was not really a very good student. I was a great writer, and I wanted to write stories. Like, I wrote in my journal every single day from age 13 to 30. And so, like, the muscle of self-reflection, coachability, because I was always coaching myself within my journaling. I don't know. I think it was, I don't want to go into the real world with a PR degree. I didn't really pick it. Like, I was kind of led in that direction by somebody who was like, this is what you need to do. And it wasn't my choice. Ultimately, I chose it. But now I feel like working with people, I feel this passion to help people get aligned with who you truly are and what choices you can make that are what you want to do, not what other people are directing you to do. So by the time I graduated the PR degree, I had a creative writing minor. Luckily, I was able to sneak that in there to actually do something I was passionate about. But literally, it was volleyball, boys, and beer. I was like partied big, and I like to have fun and then just play volleyball. And I didn't really focus on, now this arc is coming to a close. And I really didn't, I would say I was kind of antisocial in a way. I was really punk rock. I might not look like that now. But that was my outlet, was kind of this this rebel. Yeah. And so when everybody was telling me, you can't play pro, my coach wasn't going to back me up, agents turned me down, I was like, I just had this force within me. It was like, watch me, because I felt like this is my pathway.
Keep going on that point, because there's a connection. That's something that we all wish, that grit you're describing. I'll say it and we'll flag the episode. That fuck you attitude of, I'm gonna get this done and you can't stop me. I'll do it despite and in spite of you. Like, that punk rock mentality had to come from somewhere. And we all wish our employees had it. And so later on, I'm going to ask you how the heck we identify it or build it. But where did it come from in you? What's the origin story of the grit to do that?
I think it was like a deep rage. There was just a dissatisfaction with things, of how things had unfolded in my youth and different things that happened to me in my youth. that created a fuel within me. And I really wanted an escape. And so I think it was part of it was I'm done with California. I'm done with my parents. I'm done with being told what to do. I'm done with being in an education system that doesn't fit my learning style. I'm done with like not being able to play my senior year. And I know I can be out there and be one of the best out there. It was this like, I'm going to go take it to the extreme. And, you know, so I think that drive of like a rage, but also I don't know where that drive came. I think my childhood was a lot of scenarios of survival mode. And so there, you know, that's the highlight that comes out of survival mode is you end up becoming ballsy and like know how to like push things to get what you need and be independent.
You're making me, you said this was late 90s, so it's making me channel like, this is a good Charlotte song, or this is a Blink, this is one of the early Blink albums, and this song of this character leaves Pepperdine and says, screw you world, I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah, I was like into like Bad Religion, and I had like Bad Religion stickers, which is a cross with a line through it, which was not acceptable. I got in trouble for wearing Bad Religion gear on campus. I shaved my head in rebellion. I was in a lot of the FU mode was my early 20s.
Audience, you all can't see Ann. So, you know, we don't upload a video for this yet, but you got to understand how big of a gap that is from the professional poised person sitting across from me and that I've met in a coffee shop before. Like that just doesn't come across that there was an era of you wandering around this campus wearing a Bad Religion hoodie that most people wouldn't be able to identify what it is other than it's black and white and bad. And you got, did you have like gauge earrings or any of the...
That wasn't a thing, but I did have tattoos, which back then was like really, really not the thing. And I had painted my nails black and I had my tongue pierced. And so I was told I didn't represent the university and I didn't represent my scholarship. And that I was going to have to change my style to fit what they thought a volleyball player should look like that represented the university. So I was up against it every step of the way.
Yeah. And you fought. You battled for the personal expression that, you know, it makes me think of like professional athletes that I see on TV today. And I don't watch volleyball, so I can't say that this is true for volleyball. But if you watch basketball, hockey, football, most athletes have some degree of tattoos, at least at a minimum, if not the funky hairstyle or something that sets them apart from the mold of the clean-cut college athlete that they probably had to be in order to get to that level of performance.
I was maybe the Rodman of my time.
Yeah, there we go. Has that changed culturally, or has that always been a latent portion of high-performing athletes that is just maybe suppressed in certain systems that they have to emerge from?
I think certain systems for sure. I think there was a norm with what volleyball players were supposed to look like. And it was only my senior year that my coach had an opportunity to do a commercial for Nike, or it was Gatorade, and they wanted cutting edge athletes. Oh. And she wasn't very fond of me. But I had spiked blonde hair with like the roots growing out. Yeah. And they picked me to be part of it because it was kind of starting to be the edge.
Sure. That's pretty cool. That had to be a fun, interesting experience.
It was actually, you know, but then it's like I went to Europe and now I'm traveling around and they were like, who is this crazy American girl?
Right. Yeah, for sure. So wait, I want to zoom in on that Gatorade experience, because here you are, anti-establishment, fuck the man style approach to this thing. And you get a chance to do a Gatorade commercial, which arguably in any athlete of our era's time, there was no power. There were no body armors. There was nothing beyond Gatorade and Powerade. And frankly, nobody really liked Powerade. So Gatorade was it. It was like the Wheaties box of opportunities.
Right.
You got to do that as this anti-establishment. Were you kind of giddy inside, or was it tough to carry the FU attitude into a Gatorade shoot at that point?
You know what I did? And I look back, I like tried to comb my hair to the side and like make it look normal. Like, oh, no. I didn't keep it spiked. I took off the nail polish. I was like trying to fit what they wanted because that was, you know, a higher end opportunity.
Yeah. We're going to come back to that because there's a lesson in the microcosm of that adaptation to expectation that plays out in business all the time that you see. And I want to put a flag in coming back to that part. Okay, so in the story, you send 100 letters to all these different people. Is that your first outbound sales effort of your life, effectively?
I was very entrepreneurial because at that age, I was also coaching a club volleyball team. And I decided that we're going to raise a bunch of money and I'm going to come up with a business plan for how we're going to make money for this team so that we can travel and go to, a big tournament. And I was 19. And so I set up a whole sales booth at the fountain in the middle of Pepperdine, where I went to Costco, and like typically they do that now, right? For fundraisers. But back then they maybe weren't doing that so much. And I was like thinking of all the snacks and all the things that college students like. And then I had it all set up and then sold it, and I got in trouble and I had to like remove it and wasn't allowed, so it was like always trying to find the way.
Yeah. So maybe this isn't that far out of character at that point to write 100 letters to strangers in foreign languages you don't speak, to act that way. But that's a huge leap for most people. So for the rest of the audience, for the rest of this episode, your job is to recognize Ann as an entrepreneur in this adventure we're describing. Because yes, there's an athletic product attached to it, but everything you're describing, that's what you were doing at that point. You were forging yourself into this entrepreneur who would emerge and launch the businesses you've launched since. So you write 100 letters. Like, what happens?
Well, I had a big map set up in my room with pins, and I'd go to the mailbox each day. Am I going to have one? Am I going to have one? And the whole time, my parents are like, start real life. You need to look for a job now. I had even met with a recruiter for the military because I was like, I don't even know what, but with a college degree, and I like being in a structured environment. I did, but I didn't.
Yeah. Like
being in the structured environment. So I'm getting so much noise that I should stop this pursuit. And it's really, really loud. I got 4 letters back.
4% hit rate. That's better than today's traditional cold email outreach, or that's way better than just about any other path to market anyone's ever done at scale. So you hit N of 100, which is a meaningful data set.
Right.
You got a 4% response.
It's enough. It's enough to go on.
Apparently.
Where typically, if you get like a snapshot of what it would typically look like, an agent would travel with 12 to 16 girls and do like exhibition games. And so they would set up a tour all throughout Europe, do exhibition games. Coaches from nearby would come and watch the exhibition game and then make selections and then work through the agent to do contracts. That's how it's done, at least back then. I pretended to be my agent and say, tell me what time on what day within August that you practice, and give Ann a chance to come show you that you're going to want to hire her on your team. So there's a big gap between saying that and then going and doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I got the 4 responses, and it was like Tuesday at 9 p.m. and Fridays at this. So I have the time and the spot in Belgium, in France, and 2 in Switzerland. And I have it mapped out, but it's like, I have no cell phone. I have no GPS. I just have cutouts of maps of like that town where the train station is, where I could potentially stay, looking in a book that I got from the library, right? Where I can be like, oh, they have hostels typically in this area. And then like I drew with a highlighter how to get to the gym from the train station. And then they were on little pieces of paper that I had like in my backpack. So that was my map for how to get to each of these tryouts. And so then I show up at a gym, but this is where the techniques that I use now as a coach were innately developed through the circumstance, right? Because I had a high belief in myself. I had a confidence level that was really high when I played sports. Like, it was my jam. I'm a good athlete, and I'm a good teammate, and I'm a good leader, and I know how to get shit done. And so I had like a belief in myself, but I'm also jumping into like the ocean, and I've already been in like a fish tank. And now I'm in a different domain, and I don't speak the language. And so I would do this routine before I would go in, where I have like my Walkman with a playlist. I had like 5 cassettes of my favorite music that would get me ready and get me locked in. I had journaled to myself from myself, getting myself ready, positive affirmations, telling myself what I'm going to do, what it's going to look like once I'm on this team. I walked around the town earlier. I even went into some shops and been like, if I make this team, I'm going to get that for my new apartment. Like, I just like give myself all the positive vibes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
what was on the playlist?
What's that?
What was on the playlist?
Ooh,
I'm a big music fan, and you've been having like your experience makes me think of a bunch of music, and so like,
I feel like music and soundtracks. I have like soundtracks to my life. Music and movement's a big part of who I am, and so it's funny because I had the perfect arc of a playlist from like it started with Enya. Do you remember Enya?
Oh, yeah. Not what I expected you to say, Miss Bad Religion, but all right, I'm with you.
So, well, that's a different playlist for a different, like sure. They fit. And so there's always like a meditation start that I would do. Like I'd light a candle. I'd have like a little candle. I'd light it no matter where I was, and I would sit with the music, and I would visualize and be like seeing myself succeeding. And then like the next song was like a David Bowie song, and then there was a Queen song, and then there was like then there was like Alice DJ Alone, like a little techno. Then there's like a punk rock. I'm a big Rush fan, and back then I was crazy about Rush, so I had like certain Rush songs that just like touch my soul. And whether you like Rush or not, people are lovers or haters. It was the arc of my game prep. Like it's game time. And so I would do that before stepping into the gym. And then once I put on those knee pads, tie my shoes, and I walk in that gym, and I've memorized a few phrases that would be like, I'm Ann, the player that's come for the tryout. Nobody would know who I was, not once, because it was like the letter went to somebody in the office or the main.
Right.
Nobody would know who I was. And so I'd have a choice. I could be awkward off to the side, or do I walk in like I belong on the team?
Act as if I'm on this team. And I'd grab a ball, and I'd get like tossed to the ball to the setter and get in the hitting line. And like, there'd be like an uproar. Like the girls would be like, who is this girl? Like, what's going on? And I would just be owning it. And then finally somebody would be like, there's supposed to be some girl that came, and then it would click. Here she is. How'd they go?
Every tryout, in every language, I was told, you were incredible. And I literally had some of the best tryouts. It was all or nothing.
Wow.
And each time they would tell me in every language, very good and very short. Too short.
Oh, no.
Too small to be their like star paid outside hitter, because back then they could have 2 foreign players per team. So if they're going to choose a foreign player, they have a lot of options in Europe. There's a lot of foreign players from other countries nearby. So if they want to get a German middle blocker, like they're only allowed to have 2 foreign ones. So they have to choose carefully. And I was not going to hit the mark with the height.
So did you end up playing? It sounded like you did. What happened?
So I got to the last tryout, and I had to do a little Hail Mary. And so I knew then nobody's going to take an outside hitter who's 5'9". So what position at that time could play and be smaller and be in the front row was setter, because there was no libero back then.
Yeah.
They had liberos, but it wasn't called that, and it wasn't a fixed position for somebody small necessarily. So I went into the last one, and I learned the phrase how to say, Ich bin Passerin. I am a setter. And I did my whole routine beforehand, and I visualized every high-level setter I'd ever played with. And I'm like, let's go. Let's download into my fingertips. Let's make this happen. And I went out there and I set, I don't remember. I feel like I blacked out. Like I was just like locked in. And at the end, the coach was like, very good. Very good. Sign contract. I was like, well, let me talk to my agent. Yeah. And so that's how I got on that team. But you can see how then that created a new problem.
Yeah, you're the dog that caught the bumper. Like, what do I do now?
Yes. So then I got to write back to everybody and be like, look at me now, suckers. Like, I'm on this team. But then inside, I'm like, oh, no.
How long did you play over there?
5 years.
So it worked for 5 years. The adaptation performed just fine. So yeah, I was able to pull it off for probably 2 months, and I was miserable, and it was beyond hard. They all on this particular team in Switzerland, they all paid to play. Oh.
And one person was paid. Me. In any dynamic, that is going to create a lot of friction. And I'm foreign, and I mean, like, I'm getting all of the accolades. I'm in the paper, and the other girls, I was their first foreign purchase for this club.
Okay.
And the girls were used to getting all the attention. And so it created a conflict within that, because now I'm this new thing. And so all the towns coming out to watch and like cheer me on, and the pressure to perform and be to their expectation every second. There was no reprieve. At the end of every practice, they huddled and they'd have a quick conversation, and then somebody translated, which they must have found in a dictionary, because hardly any of them spoke English. They would tell me whether I was worth it or not. They would literally say, "Ann, today you were not worth it." And then they'd all cheer, "Huh!" And then they'd walk out of the gym. And then I would hang my head and walk back to my apartment, where I have no internet. I have no phone. I can't call my mom and be like, "I'm not worth it today." I literally sit down in my puzzle, put on my earphones, do my puzzle. Then I'd write in my journal. I'd coach myself. I'd have a couple drinks, maybe 2 more. That became a problem, because it was ooh, this is really hard, and I don't really know how to navigate this. And I'm 21 years old.
Right.
And so it wasn't until there was an off play, one match with no block, and I went up and hit the ball, and the coach timed out. He's like, "No more passing." I was like, "Let's fucking go."
Oh.
So then I switched. Then I got to be outside hitter after that. And then it was my flow state, because I was so clogged. I couldn't play setting and running the show with all in Swiss German, and nobody speaks English, and the plays are outrageous, and the coach is making really crazy choices that don't make sense. And I'm so frustrated, and I can't really even play. And then everybody's judging me every second that I'm doing anything. And so then I felt like every every match was a tryout. So I wrote a little letter to every coach that we played. I'm like, "See how I play in this game against your team. Maybe I'm potentially a player for your team next year." Because really I needed live action, not a tryout. If we're in a game and I'm smoking you and I'm 5'9", I'm potentially a player for your team.
Sure.
So that's how I got on a team the next year in Switzerland. And then I got recruited into Spain. And so I played 3 years in Spain after that, and on the Pro Beach Tour in Spain. So full seasons, indoor and beach.
Do you have a book about this already?
I do, but I wrote it a while ago, and it's because I'm sober 20 years. And so it's also the journey of being a high performer that's doing extraordinary things, but I was still handicapping myself.
Yeah.
I was still not able to access my true zone of genius because I was afraid, or I couldn't manage my own interior landscape. On the court I could, but off the court I couldn't.
Yeah. You have, there's multiple stories there, and I respect that you wrote it from that lens. But the story you're telling, going back, it is the entrepreneurial adventure. You had the right person in the wrong seat on the bus. They had to emerge from that dynamic. They were a new leader on a team. They had to influence people without any authority, and everybody wanted them to fail for a host of reasons that make tons of sense in context, and you didn't. And that's like how, and then you had to adapt the product from outside hitter to setter. I'm just learning these terms. My 9-year-old is starting to play volleyball, so I actually know what those things mean at this point, which makes
good luck with that.
Yeah, but like you had to adapt the product after you got market feedback of what people would and would not pay for. Like everything you're saying in your volleyball journey is the stereotypical myth of a business that's being launched in the West. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And the fun piece is in between Switzerland and Spain, I was living on a shoestring. Like I was not making big money.
Yeah.
I made it look good. I'd write back letters and postcards and tell people what it was all about, like making it look pretty romanticized and glorious. And it was not that at all.
Yeah.
And I had an opportunity to play in a beach tournament in England. And I was sleeping in a train station, like before I got to the tournament. Like I didn't have any extra money. And I won the Queen of the Beach, like in England. And it gave me $2,000 and I got to sleep in a castle. Like that night was part of the deal. And with that $2,000, I was able to fly to Spain. And I knew I was going to be playing on the team there, but I can't start off with like empty coffers, right? And I immediately signed up to get myself a job. Like, so I signed myself up to become an English teacher for foreigners.
Cool.
And so that became a pivotal piece of me becoming like a teacher, a coach, a leader of helping people rise. And that was in a different environment because I was teaching executives. It ended up being executives in a big gas company. And so I went from thinking, I'm just going to, teach little groups of people some English things. But then once I got certified, it opened up this whole other world where now I'm playing pro in Spain. And during the day, I'm dressed like an executive. I'm going to these big businesses and I am like holding space for these high-level Spanish men executives and trying to get them to acquire a new language. Yeah. And so there was just a huge leap then, but using the small amount of money I had to teach myself a skill so that I could get to the next level and keep playing pro. Because playing pro does not like pay for the bills entirely.
What a fascinating origin story. So that's the backdrop that built the perspective, the frameworks, the lived experience, the grit, all of the things that you've built professionally to help business owners and leaders act and perform in the same way high-performing athletes do stem from this story. Mm-hmm. Why is sports such a good parallel for business? Why do we value those stories? Why does it come over so cleanly? Why is that?
I think we experience so many of the same mindset glitches in business that we do in high-level sports.
Elaborate. What do you mean by glitch? Because I agree, I think.
Yes. So I would say, number one, expectations. So in a business, as an entrepreneur, I have expectations on myself. My clients have expectations. My family of how well I'm going to do in my business have expectations. If I have like assistants that are doing things, they have expectations that I need to like do for them. It's loaded with expectations. Same thing in sports. And so whether that's the outcome, it's very much outcome focused. Outcome and results have driven business and driven sports. That's the like backbone of it. But when you flip the paradigm and you're like, how do I want to feel along the way? Is the golden ticket, right? Where you're more likely to have the outcome or the result you want when you're nurturing the process. That very much happens in sports. I'm working with Eastern Oregon University. They just went to the national championship. They lost in the semis last night, but I've been teaching them and working with them on the process, right? And you're at the national championship, that gets close to the outcome. You get really sucked into outcome. So that's a big one between sports and business. How do you calibrate yourself to the process? Comparisons, huge. And that could either work for you or work against you. It's like a double-edged sword, right? I could look at my, ultimate athlete in volleyball and be so driven to be like that athlete, or I could be intimidated by it. I'm not there yet. I'm not as good as her. Why did she get that opportunity? Same thing in business. You go on Instagram for 10 minutes and you're pulling up anything that has to do with your realm of business. And you're like, look what she's doing. Look what he's doing. I'm not doing that. I don't have that system. He's so successful, right? And these are all blocks to our flow state. And whether that's business or whether that's sport, we all want to drop into that juicy place where time dilates and we have like productivity and creativity, and we just have a knowing of what's going on. We all want that. We want that in sports, and you see it more in sports because you can watch Kobe, you can watch like any of these high level players when they're dropped into their flow state. It's like you can witness it because, wow, the ball went in the basket and there was 2 seconds left. They're really locked in. It's harder to see that in business. So that's why I like working with people to help them identify their flow state, because that drops you in the process versus the outcome. And so these obstacles I'm talking about that parallel through business and through sports, ultimately we all want to access flow. And can we identify the marker points that block it? Because they're the same in sports as they are in business. So whether that's expectations, comparisons, financial stakes. When I played on the pro beach volleyball tour, I played on the AVP, and I was also a high school teacher at the same time. So I'd teach during the week, and then I would fly out on Friday and travel to wherever I was going to be competing. Well, if I didn't place 12th or above, I would be out my money. Like I wouldn't even be making my money back for my travel, my coaches, my nutritionists, my strength and the stakes are so high. And that's the same in business. You're going to take risks. And then if it doesn't pay out, so there's a lot of financial stakes. So these are the things that are very similar through each of those. And there's tools and teachables and skills that you're exercising the muscle, just like you would in sports. But a lot of people forget to do that in their everyday life.
That's a lot of comparisons. And I think they all fit. I mean, the one you just described, the awareness of consequence, is one that evaporates in businesses as they scale often, which is one of the reasons why it's so difficult for a company to go from a small team of 5 to 10 or 30 to 50 to 100 to 300, is your siloing and your verticalization removes people from the consequence of their specific action. And if an accountant on your team makes an error, they don't really ever necessarily know about it, and there's not somebody at the end of practice every day at work that says, today you were worth it. And today you weren't worth it. Right? That's in a dream world of feedback. We have a psychologically safe enough environment where every single one of your employees every day could know, today you brought it and we're so freaking grateful, and today you didn't, and you're going to need to do better. Like, that's really hard to do in business. It's a lot easier when there's 6 of you on the court and everyone's looking at you like you're the asshole that keeps missing the shot or whatever it might be, or the block or whatever.
Right.
So you lose those things. But the performance versus outcome one, I think outcome versus process one, I think is one that I tend to focus on a lot in my business as well, because we would prepare for anything, right? Any professional athlete, hell, even any high school athlete would practice all week long for that specific performance that they're going to go through. And they would spend significantly more hours watching film, running plays, getting footwork coaching, working out, eating intentionally, sleeping accordingly, ice bath, sauna, whatever. You would do all of that for a freaking high school basketball game of any consequence.
Mm-hmm.
Do we do any of those types of things for the 4 meetings that you have to close tomorrow or your business goes under? Like most of the time, no. So where does it break down? Why, as much as there's parallels, why don't we, and all of us do this, you and I can sit here, we're not on a high horse saying we are business owners. We fail at this sometimes too. Why does it break down? The things we know to be true to drive performance in the physical world of athletics that we do not port over to business, even though it is so obvious when we talk about it. Why does that happen?
Hey, well, this might be a winning answer for both of us. And I feel like what's missing is a coach, right? Because when you're on a team, you have somebody that's holding the space and reminding you and guiding you along the way to this one performance. When you drop into business, if you have a strong leader, strong CEO, somebody who's like on top of really caring about the emotional development and personal growth of employees that instill, like put systems in place. But apart from that, I think as adults or not in the sports world, we just get going with life and we forget to honor all the habits and routines and rituals and mindset glitches and catching them because we work so much on what's immediately successful. And that's productivity and hustle. And I fall victim to this all the time being a high performer, and being a high performance coach. Even with that label, I sometimes put pressure on myself that I somehow have to show up as a high performer in everything I do. And I have to remember, there's all kinds of breakdowns within being a high performer. There's all kinds of routines I put in place to help myself perform better. Even before today, I did a whole routine. It's like game time when I'm going to come on this podcast for you, and I'm not going to neglect that step. And so for me, some things are completely built into my process of how I'm going to show up. But that's because I am a coach, and that's what I advocate for everybody I work with. So I am getting to hear myself. It's all like how I used to write in my journal, to myself, from myself. And so when I'm coaching people, I'm ultimately coaching myself. And so I'm constantly reminded I need to have routines in place. And so, for example, before this session today, I had to run through my mind, what are the things I can control? What are the things I can't control? You need to do that with athletes before games, but you need to do that in business too, before you're going to step onto a podcast. I can't control if my volume is going to work right or not. Right, which happened a little bit earlier. I can't control that you might ask me a question that stumps me and I might feel a certain way. Right. I had to get clear on certain things, but what I can control, that I'm fully prepared, that I trust myself, I look cute, even if nobody's going to watch it, that I've got myself set up in the way where I know I'm ready. It's game time. And so I treat business like game time, all the little pockets of things. And so I think what people as adults, they start hustling and they want the immediate response to things, not dropping into how do I front load for what's coming so I can be a better me in that moment. Instead, I'm going to grind out 5 more mini tasks.
There's so many directions I want to take this, but I think I want to linger on the coach word that you used, because it's in our profession, it means a specific thing, but it's also a term that's somewhat bastardized on LinkedIn or in business in general. But in its purest form, athletics is the greatest place to see what a coach really is. A coach can see things you can't see. They are completely removed from the outcome, and they can see the process that led to the performance, and they can see the process that led to it. They know the best practices that would lead you to a better version of success, or they are experts at helping you extract your process that's going to make you be the best. That's what the really best coaches absolutely do, not prescribe theirs, but actually help you unlock yours. What are some other things that a coach does in its purest form in athleticism that we may not understand if you're not intimately familiar with what it means to be a coach at a really high level in the business world?
I think the listening skills of coaches is what sets them apart. Like, how can you really hear what this person is sharing and be able to extract the edge? Because a lot of people in business are already high performers. They're already strong. They're already there. They already feel like I'm good. And so, some people you work with can have glaring glitches, glaring issues, whether that's perfectionism or unrealistic expectations or, no downtime or boundaries, like some things that are easy to identify. A really high level coach can listen in a way and really hear the patterns and the glitches and be able to masterfully weave together small, attainable solutions to help that person and then help hold them accountable. Because it's these micro improvements, especially when you're already at a high level. What are the edges that I can do this one micro habit? And when I'm stacking maybe something else on that, it's going to move the needle over time, and it's holding the space for them to keep them anchored into that, say, mindset, goal, or intention. Because it's very easy to let it slide when you have so many things on the to-do list. That cultivating that growth mindset and being accountable to somebody. And so a coach that can really hold space for that and reflect that back, because a lot of times people have the wisdom within them. It's already there. They just can't see it. And so you pull it and then you reflect it back.
What does it mean for a coach, a high-performing athletic coach, to hold the athlete accountable? What does that tangibly mean? What happens in that moment?
Yeah, that's honesty and the willingness to let that athlete be uncomfortable and fail, or maybe not even play them if needed to help them learn that lesson. And so allowing people to be uncomfortable and sit in it and not try to solve it is an important piece at a high level. And so with Eastern Oregon University, they're a great example for me. I feel like they're led by Kaki Moorhead, who is a really incredible, phenomenal leader. She's got 19 years coaching EOU, and she's no nonsense, but she's very caring and loving, but yet she is down to business and she doesn't let stuff slide. So she cares and she talks with them when they need it, but she will push them so hard and keep them on their edge where they're uncomfortable a lot.
Yeah, coach's willingness to be able to do that translates over to business well. That's a characteristic that, whether it's radical candor and the mindset of caring personally but challenging directly, or a bunch of other mechanisms or ways you could think about it, that makes a lot of sense. What about on an athletic team, you're always at risk of losing your starting spot. Your ability to be accountable isn't just a function of a coach who's willing to do that thing we just described. You have a much deeper fear of, I have to stay at the top of my game, that tip of the edge of performance, because the young buck flying over from the States who mailed my coach a bunch of letters is going to come over here and completely disrupt how things are done here if I don't earn that starting time. And so there's an immediate feedback loop in athletics due to that competitive pressure of your own teammates, not even to mention the fear of getting relegated or losing the games that you're playing, that absolutely evaporates in the business world. Once a company is above a certain size, you're just so divorced from the risk of mediocrity that you lose that pressure. Have you seen organizations that do a good job of recreating that? When I say good job, I don't mean they'll cut your throat. There's some that do a bad job of that, where it's like, cut your throat and fire the people that don't make it. But have you seen any organizations do a good job of replicating that internal pressure mechanism?
I think with the ones that have pocket leadership, where there's tiers of leadership, where there's incentives seems to do really well to motivate people, where then you have a tangible goal that you're working toward that you're going to be rewarded by. And I think that's similar in sports, and so the winning of a championship and what that feels like, or what sponsorship you might get from that. And so I think within business, the incentive model, and that could be a variety of different ways that help push people. And then having designated leaders at different levels that have been trained to be good leaders, right? That's an important piece of how do you get that connection, within that grouping, where there is like a flow, just like when you see birds flying in a flock. and then they're like flowing together. Like, how can that leader create a flow within that tier of business?
Those are good mechanisms. Incentives tend to be more obvious in things like sales, maybe marketing areas where you have quantifiable business outcomes. But a lot of that isn't the case. Like, a lot of times, most business functions don't have that degree of transparency nor quantification that they can really rely on.
Yeah, I just did a mindset audit for a real estate company. And so this is like an interesting concept, where there were 66 brokers that took the survey, and it was very specific questions I was asking about mindset and where they fall on the scale of 1 to 10. And then I took all that data and I presented it to their whole staff, showing where they fall on the scale and where their peers fall on the scale. And then also looking at the years of experience. And so broke that down. There was only one person with 1 year, and there were 21 people with over 20 years. Right. And so it's interesting to get a snapshot of how long people have been in the game, and then how strong do you feel like you hit the mark with these mindset issues. And then I challenge them to make one of their goals for 2026 to be one of the mindset glitches that I extracted. So I picked the top 3 that seem to be across the board and challenge them to take one of those issues. And then, I'm a coach, so I can help you with these issues, but here's a couple prompts you could put into ChatGPT and say, here, I want you to act as a high performance coach for real estate brokers. And here is my main, mindset glitch. And this is what I tend to do. Give me a game plan for 2026 about how I can improve on this. And if people are actually focused on improving that edge, and then maybe they have a partner within the business that are like, okay, each week we're going to check in about how I'm working on my perfectionism or how I'm setting my boundaries with clients. And there's specific tangibles. I'm going to do A, B, and C this week to help myself set better boundaries with clients. Or I'm not going to stay late and keep rewriting the email 8 times till I think it's like exactly the way I want it. And really that 45 minutes, I could have been skiing or doing something that's like truly lights me up. Right. And so it's like helping people audit. But a lot of people, they don't know where are their glitches or their edges, or they know the general ones. But those, for example, could be very specific ways to then work toward a fun goal within a pod, for example, in a business of like, we're all going to be accountable. Let's see, and then keep track of it, and you can have fun with it. And then you're really improving your mindset agility. And
that sounds really powerful. You said something I want to hone in on, and I want to be careful. I'm not interested in the specifics of this organization as I ask this question as much as I am maybe an extrapolation of this dynamic. You described an organization where 21 people had been there for more than 20 years, and one person had been there for less than a year. Maybe there's more in the middle there. But
yeah, there's a lot in the middle.
Years ago, one of my coaches told me, you show me a guy with 20 years experience, and I don't know if they have 20 years of experience or if they have 1 year of experience 20 times. And I know you've experienced this, where quite often you go into a company and you get a false sense of confidence in the skillful capabilities of their people based on years they've done it as a proxy for skill. You just think since someone's done it a long time, they're obviously really good at it. This is wildly untrue. And it is like demonstrably painful for most organizations to artificially believe that just because somebody has rotated around the earth more times with that title than the next guy, that they're actually better at applying whatever relevant skills or processes lead to the successful outcomes they desire. Like, that's just not true. And yet that fallacy remains. In the work that you do, have you seen that? And how have you navigated that in companies that do have a lot of senior people who frankly may not be doing the things that the company needs them to be doing in the right ways?
Yeah, that's interesting. I first experienced that in Spain when I was the English teacher for executives. That came up more times of old dogs not wanting to learn new tricks.
Sure.
or not wanting to be accountable for growth, because then it would expose, I've been here for a long time and I'm actually insecure with this particular area. I faced that so much. It was very, but I was 21 at the time, trying to convince these 50-year-old executive men to do to work on their language. But ultimately I was a coach at that time. You know, I've experienced, I don't have like a ton of years under my belt yet in the business realm with doing that. And it's interesting, the ones that I have done, there's been wild cards in every room where there's an outspoken old timer who's ready to raise their hand and call me out on whatever. And that's kind of what they tend to do when it hits the barrier with something they're uncomfortable with. Yeah. I don't want to have to do this, and I'm going to try to create a little friction and try to call it out from you and see what you can do in this moment. And so that's been new in this new realm of coaching with business, of how much trust in my own ability to handle these rogue, and they're not even necessarily rogue, but they're willing to do that at a group level, is to challenge it instead of actually taking a look at themselves. And so I have a tendency to be really brutally honest with that person and call them out in that setting. And so I don't know if that's really the best way to do it, but it's kind of how I've been sharpening my chops, is like really pulling out what they're saying in the moment and then asking them a few strategic questions that put them on the spot. So they're trying to like deflect and not have to do it, but in turn, it puts the spotlight right back on them in front of their peers.
Yeah, that's, I would encourage you to keep going down that road. Not that I'm ready to write a book about that topic by any stretch and I'm perfect at it, but I do think, you know, if I zoom out a little bit on you and I's experiences of it, and I just examine that scenario for what it is. And to your point, this could take place in a training room, in a conference. It could be in a group setting. It could be in a virtual call with a bunch of people on it. But this dynamic where an individual feels emboldened to challenge the thing that is objectively trying to help them, like literally invested in by the company, by whoever the stakeholder was in the company's ability to determine Ann's the best person to help us solve this problem. And that person is coming at it sideways in an effort to what I'll directly call most of the time sabotaging the ability for you to have influence there. Because that's usually what it is. Mm-hmm. There's obviously exceptions to that. And if I put my hat on it for them and I go, well, why might a person do that? Well, they've been there for 20 years. They've probably seen a bunch of us cycle through their company. And let's be super fair. Most consultants and coaches and things like that are pretty good. And there's a bunch that aren't. And I don't know if that person has experienced a bunch that have not very good, or maybe the content was good, but they sucked at execution. They didn't hold people accountable. Maybe the company gave up on the initiative. There's a whole host of reasons why previous investments in Ann Rivera being in front of them have meant no change. And that person's sitting there going, who's this one? Why in God's name would I spend any amount of my effort I could be spending doing these other things? Which frankly, I can get behind. I can actually understand the human desire to say, why waste my time with this person? We've been wrong 15 times with previous consultants. Why the F would I believe this one's the right one? And so I tend to think of this person as kind of a bully. Mm-hmm. They feel like it's their job to vocalize this in one way or the other. And I tend to find in life, like, bullies need punched in the mouth. So like, I love your idea of, well, I can't actually punch you and that wouldn't be the right solution anyway, but I can ask you a handful of questions, which are our weapons. Very good questions tend to be our swords in these battles.
Yes.
And if you can get that person to answer those questions and put themselves in a position of like, oh shit, there is a problem. Because I think the ultimate thing that tips that person over, and I bet you've lived through it, and I know I have, and most coaches live through it at some point of like, ooh, I actually won that person over. They were a skeptic. And now they're not. They're a believer. They're an evangelist even. It usually comes down to us helping them identify what's in it for them to be willing to change in the first place.
Yeah.
And buried in that ego and fear is like a, why do I need to change anything at all question? And if there is a real answer to that, which there is, that's why they're paying us, and they can articulate it and they connect that dot, we tend to have smoother sailing.
But I kind of like these moments because I feel like with my coaching, I've put myself in so many rooms that I don't even necessarily belong in. Like last year I worked with a men's college basketball, And like, to walk in that room and they're all sitting in there like, what's this girl gonna teach me? And then I walk out and they're like, yeah, they're high-fiving. They're just like, you helped me so much. You know, I love the opportunity to have a challenge.
Yeah.
With every room I walk into, I do the controllables and the uncontrollables. And like, I score myself, like I do like a Stoke audit at the end of each presentation, because I give 100%. I am prepped. I am ready. I brought everything I can. I want people to walk out, not just motivated, but with actionables, things to do right away. And so whether it is a room of basketball guys or I've done baseball teams, like big groups of men can sometimes be challenging for a female to step in and do that. And, you know, the one I did recently was like, say the damn thing was the topic. And that's like owning your voice and your truth. And so people fall in all kinds of places on the scale with that, of what they're willing to say when it comes up for them, and whether they hold it back, whether they choose to say it. So it was like a technique, a very specific technique for catching when you're wanting to hold back and then actually sharing it. And it was an optional event for this, you know, so this guy knew what the topic was. And chose to come also, and then chose to challenge me in front of the whole group of like, this is not relevant for me because I already say the damn thing all the time. And then went on and started coaching the group like over me, like how, if you actually want to learn how to say the damn thing,
not this person over here.
Yes. Right. And then I was like, let me ask you this. Would you perhaps be saying too much of the damn thing? And it was like, stopped him in his tracks.
How much is it about saying the damn thing versus getting them to hear the damn thing you said?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And afterwards, there was a group of people that came up afterwards and they were like, we are so glad that and they were, you know, went on and on about how challenged they were by him because he doesn't listen and, you know, talks way too much. So it's like pretty glaring when somebody's going to challenge like that they have some work to do.
Have you watched Ted Lasso?
Yes.
We're rewatching that. We started it again Thanksgiving week to show my brother it, and we just finished season 1. And it's like that moment when he's like, the key to this team hearts lives through that man right there, Roy Kent. And he's like, he's going to be so pissed when he becomes friends with us. It's going to make him so mad. That's what you're going for with these guys. You're trying to win over that person who was the saboteur and help them recognize if they grow, and then people follow that.
Yeah. So every time there's going to be an obstacle in the room, I don't know where it's going to come up. I spoke at local high school recently in the auditorium to like 300 athletes, and they could care less what I had to say. It was one of the most challenging. Wow. I mean, they were disrespectful. They were like shouting things at me. And I was like, I brought I was a high school teacher for 10 years. So I'm like, I know I got this. I'm well prepared. And still I walked away like, oh, wow, that was hard. And then just audited my, like how I showed up and I'm like, and sometimes you realize you're in the wrong room. And so that's like, it wasn't like something I did or how I could have done it differently or better. I need to make some new choices about who my audience is.
Yeah, that's a good observation. There's, I think it's very fair to look in the mirror and acknowledge that there are rooms you are not the right person for, and that is not a deficiency. It's just a misalignment. Square peg, round hole, both have value. Like, it's just different fit. And being able to articulate that cleanly to yourself, especially as an entrepreneur and solopreneur and coach, is pretty important, because you can waste a lot of time in the wrong rooms, chasing down the desire to get in front of those wrong rooms. I want to go back to something you said a few minutes ago before we run out of time, because I think you talk a lot about flow state. And it sounds like a lot of what you believe in, I'm paraphrasing, so if there's a cleaner way to say it, by all means do, but it seems like a lot of what you believed in, and seem to have believed in since Pepperdine, if not before, was that you need to have a process to get yourself into your flow state, to bring it. And whether that's your Enya starting soundtrack, or a reading, or prayer, or silence, or whatever your routine is, there is a way to channel your flow state, right? And an artist might call it channeling the muse or something along those lines, right? There are different expressions of this in different things that people do. I am curious how often, as people make the transition from performer to leader, that they find that flow state is a trap.
Ooh. Tell me a little more. What are you thinking?
Well, as a player, makes an enormous amount of sense. You go do a certain set of things that help you drive a certain set of performance or outcomes that you're paid to do, whether it's scoring buckets or closing deals or finishing TPS reports. I don't really care what the function is. But when you transition to leadership, your desired outcome is different, and yet your comfort, your known flow state exists performing a function which, when you do it, is not only not helpful, but it is anti-helpful. You are robbing other people of their ability to channel their flow state and do the work that you used to do incredibly well. The process would be valuable to maintain, but we want fulfillment. We want to feel validated at the end of the day. When you and I go into a room to deliver a message, we're not there to deliver a message. We're there to have an impact with that message. And we, to your Stoke audit at the end, feel significantly better at the end when we know the message got across versus when we just said the words. The impact is the thing we really care about there. I'm assuming just based on everything we talked about. As a leader, you used to be validated. You used to feel great because you closed a deal. But if you're a really good sales leader, you don't close any deals anymore. It's not your job. In fact, every deal you do close probably took the opportunity for somebody else to close the deal or to grow and hold them accountable to their lack of preparation. I see this all the time with leaders in different organizations, but I've never thought of it in this way until now, so I'm kind of exploring it. That flow state desire, that comfort in your flow state, when it has to be translated over to some new execution, or have you had to coach people through that? Is there ever a time where that becomes a trap for them?
I think that the way that you're describing it is attaching flow state to outcome.
I am. And because I think we struggle when we shift paradigms from I used to do it to now I lead others to do it, to acknowledge that my outcome has changed and therefore my flow state, what it looks like to be in the zone, cannot be the same anymore. I have to learn a new flow state to go from closing a deal to effectively, actively listening to somebody with the intention of asking them that devastating question that's going to help them break through something that's been holding them back forever. I have to be in a wildly different headspace. Those two headspaces are pretty close to each other, though. Closing somebody is a function of asking good questions. So is coaching somebody. That's terrifyingly close. And I could easily slip into the flow state of closing and be a very ineffective coach because of it. Maybe coaching is too close of a parallel. Maybe that's one arena where that's true. I don't know. Do you ever see that in any other way? Maybe I'm making it all up.
I love where you're going with it. I love, talking about the edges of flow state. There's just, it evolves and flows. Like I know that there's elements within me that help me access my flow. Like if I'm speaking on stage, I can be like, have all these notes and everything that seems to happen for me every time. And I don't ever need to look at them.
Sure.
Like it just, something starts working through me. And I wouldn't say it's a comfort zone. Like you use the word comfort. I think that you're uncomfortable, but like it. Like you're being challenged in a way. And so we kind of drop in. I think there's a formula to dropping into flow state, but it's not like a pursuit that you're like, I really need to be in my flow state today. It's like the outcome is dropping into that place where time dilates, no matter what the outcome happens. And I wouldn't say that I'm like trying to seek it every day, like I need to be in it. It's like I'm crafting my day and making choices so that I can feel more of the flow in my life. So the more I'm in the flow, the more I'm intuitively going to make choices in those moments, in those business moments, in those conversations that allow me to be so completely aligned with myself that I can pivot. I can do hard conversations. I can do like good listening conversations. And then at the end, look back and be like, wow, I really was able to access different branches of myself in one pocket of time, say with business. And so there's a lot of things you can do to drop yourself into that flow. And then we were talking earlier about the glitches that prevent that flow. And so you're kind of dissecting what it's like, what can happen within that flow state. And I think it's kind of elusive to be like so crisp about what it actually is. It can be very different for different people. I would say like these days I go to ecstatic dance on Tuesday nights, and it's like a DJ and they're playing free like music and there's an arc to it. I told you movement and music's a big part. I'm in my flow state when I'm there, and I have no challenge. I have no of like the elements that I have speaking on stage in front of a big room of people that might be acting a certain way, where I can access my flow state there. But in this arena of dance and movement, with dance like nobody's watching and just find yourself, for me, that is my purest flow state that I've been able to access recently. And it doesn't have all the other elements of some other thing that I might access my flow state. So I'm like more, how many minutes in my day can I really drop into that, but not define it needs to look a certain way?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I appreciate you expanding my thinking around that. You know, I think the concept I'm talking about I've absolutely experienced and seen, but I think I am using the word flow state incorrectly in there. So maybe I'm going to redirect the question a little differently here. Have you ever found that as somebody moves into a new role, that their flow state is inaccessible or really difficult to access in the new arena or environment they're expected to participate in?
So the perfect example would be, as I described in the first part of my story of when I went to Europe, I worked so hard to get on the team, and I was in my flow state in different times, whether the tryouts at different places, then I make it on this team. And I'm not in my flow state for 2 months in that role as a setter. That's not my role. That's new, but I'm having to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so the other main concept that I am like passionate about, and it's been my theme this year, is contrast is a catalyst for growth. And I painted that on a canvas in my closet, which is risky. I don't recommend declaring that like to the universe, who's like, oh, really? You want some more contrast?
Yeah, right. Careful what you wish for.
And so that is the petri dish of accessing flow state in a new realm. When you step into a new role where you're like, whoa, this is like stretching me in every way. I can't even drop into my flow. I don't even know who I am anymore here. Do I even belong here? That's the contrast of like, what do I need to do to get to the other side of this challenge or contrast? Because flow state's on the other side of it. And so it's like in this new arena, what are the habits, behaviors, things, mindset shifts, radical responsibility for my mindset and how I'm showing up in this new role? And then you have to work really hard until it starts to get a little easier. And then they're like, oh, wow. And that negotiation, man, I really dropped into it. Nice. There it is. And you start pulling the threads in that new role and start weaving it into what flow state looks like in that new container.
It's a really clean way to think about it. I wonder how you'd observe it. Like I can observe, I lead people and I can observe outcomes. I can be aware of processes that they follow. Maybe they align with the SOPs of our business type processes. Maybe I just know that person journals over coffee every morning in the break room. And that seems the days they do that, they perform better than the days they don't, right? Like the variation of what I can observe is there. But you've made me want to add I have this section of what we teach called the rules of engagement, where you really try to learn the person that you're responsible for influencing towards advantage. You're responsible for leading. Then it's things like, how do you want to be held accountable? And if I've got to call you out on something, what's the right way to do that? And what really motivates you? And there's a host of things that drive us that if your leader knew, they would do a better job of adapting to being a better leader for you. And when are you in your flow state? Or maybe as a quantifiable, what percentage of your week or day do you end up in your flow state? What leads to that? What challenges it? would be a really fascinating path of inquiry for a leader who wants to tap into the capabilities of their people and their potential. And what you would be actively listening for are things that help people get into it, and that contrast of a person who just they can't get into their flow state in this job. They're the outside hitter who really is only on the team because they volunteered to be a setter instead. And we got to get them in the right seat to really contribute meaningfully. And that's a really hard thing for most leaders to do. Mm-hmm. And we can talk about it in the good to great sense and get the right people on the bus and then figure out what seat they belong in. But like in practicality, that shit doesn't happen very often.
That's high level leadership.
Can you
help really everybody rise to be in their flow?
Yeah. But if you knew how to ask those questions you're articulating so cleanly, I think that would help leaders do a much better job of being able to identify who's able to access that and who do we have in a seat where they can't, or who just needs help in learning how. But that's really interesting. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So what's next?
Yeah, when I ask people about it, most people don't know how to respond. They can't act like they can't pinpoint it. And once we start talking about it, they're like, oh, but there's like a gap of understanding.
Yeah.
Of misunderstanding.
Yeah. And it's probably something that, I don't know how much of that is relatable if you've been an athlete to some degree versus not. Like I suspect musicians find the flow state. They identify with just getting into a jam. Athletes, if they've put, just at a high school level, someone's dropped into the flow state at some point and blacked out and they woke up and they scored 30 points and they don't know how, mm-hmm. Most people can relate to it through some competitive endeavor, but do you find it difficult for people who haven't lived through that to identify what you even mean?
At first, until you have the conversation. I had a booth at the health fair recently, and my whole purpose, because I wasn't really trying to sell much, I just wanted to have conversations with people and have a little like Coach Ann brand awareness.
Yeah.
And every single person that came to my table, I asked them what their flow state felt like. And I tried to get them to like make it so succinct that it was one word or phrase. And then I wrote it on a star, like a gold star, and then stuck them all around my booth. And so it could be like 3 ladies in their 70s that came up to the booth, or it could be a family, and then trying to get everybody to identify it. And so then I got really good at the reps of asking it in the right way and getting people to like reveal what it is. And so some people that might be like, laughter with my kids. When I drop into being fully present with my kids and time falls away and I'm just being playful and my son's laughing, I just feel so in my flow. It might be gardening. I have all the things I need for setting up. It's a beautiful day and I'm out there playing in the soil and I love, or when I'm cooking. And so once I started asking the questions, it was so interesting how most of the people could not identify it until I like qualified it and kept digging and giving examples, because they lock into it needs to be an athlete or a creative or a musician. It's like, no, we all access it all the time in a lot of different ways and pockets throughout the day, but we're not recognizing it or quantifying it as being that. But it's like, what brings us the most joy?
Is there a better signal than time dilation? Is that the best proxy to identify of like, when do you experience time dilation? Joy is one that I think like could be in flow state, but joy is a bigger thing. Maybe, I don't know. Is there a different one than time dilation?
Yeah, I think that, that losing sense of time, there's a lot of like semantics. I could be presence, where you're so locked in whatever's happening that time falls away. And I think that's one of the primary indicators. I've been going through a lot. My parents are in assisted living and things are very, very challenging. And sometimes time falls away where I'm like blacking out, like with all the things I have to do. That is not my flow state.
For sure. Yeah,
I'm in a pain and suffering state. That is the contrast. Yeah, so that's a good question to ask with that, because sometimes time can dilate and it's like you're doing something that's not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Time doesn't only fly when you're having fun. That's not the only indicator.
Right.
So what's next? You're as we kind of get close to time here, like what's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, speaking on stages. TEDx Bend is coming up. I'm doing a pitch application to see if I can get on stage and talk about flow state here in Bend. That would be incredible. Stepping into the container of team builds for businesses and teachables, like coming in for a series of things and helping to teach businesses how to access their flow state, how to do this audit on their mindset, and then work towards tangible, specific goals to improve that, not just Q1 goals of, whatever the typical outcome results are, but actually adding in these type of mindset intentions and goals really moves the needle. But a lot of people don't focus or put intention around that or value that. They value it, but they're like, we got to do this, this, and this instead. Yeah. And so it's like getting in those rooms, talking to people, helping people access that next level potential individually and as a group is what I'm passionate about.
Well, it sounds like it. What's the best way? You're not just passionate about it. You have built an entrepreneurial engine on the back of the concepts that you've tried since you were 21. It's phenomenal. I'm really excited for people to hear this. If they're excited about this too, like what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, my website's coachannrivera.com, and I'm on LinkedIn and the socials at Coach Ann Rivera. And, anybody could reach out for a little consult or conversation or want just a little quick hit about like, hey, how do I access my own flow state? Because I want to feel that way more often.
We'll make sure we include those links in the show notes so anybody interested can reach out to you. Thanks for coming on, Ann. I really appreciate you.
Hey, I think I need one last question for you, Erik. What is your flow state?
Ooh, do I have to put it in one word?
Maybe you can give me a scenario and then break it down to one word or phrase.
The first word that popped into my mind when I heard you say that a few minutes ago was curiosity. Which is what led to the podcast and all sorts of different things. But that's incomplete, right? Because you said a couple other things after that made me recognize, well, that's not only it. But it steers in the direction of when I get to sit side by side with somebody else and have a conversation about something neither of us know enough about that we're trying to solve. And maybe we're trying to build a business on it. So the stakes of answering the question are incredibly high. Or maybe it's some absurd thing me and my best friend are sitting in a bar talking about. And I enter a flow state when I'm side by side with another human, exploring new ideas and concepts together, whether they're of any consequence or not. The more they are, the better for my business. But that's probably where I find myself diving into it the most.
And it's interesting that that's exactly what you're doing right now. Just by setting up podcasts, your language of leadership, clearly it's like you displaying your flow state like this is where I am in my flow and I invite you in.
And I appreciate your observation of that. I've very much intentionally tried to create my life in a way that allows me to live more and more frequently in that. And it's actually one of the things that made me wonder about the flow state as a trap, because right, with the language of leadership and this podcast, I get to live in my flow state of what I do really well and what kind of excites me every day. But I launched a second company, and it requires other things of me that are absolutely not flow state functions. Like my ability to sit down and go build a custom AI role play so that you can practice the most difficult conversations you need to have. I am passionate and excited about it, but I have yet to find how to fall into a flow state when I have to be in builder mode around the tools that we use to execute some of these things. And so when I was asking about that, part of me is wondering like, man, how do you identify?
That's the pocket of contrast, because the flow state's on the other side. So you're just in the pocket, and the more you're working in that pocket of contrast, you know that flow's coming for you.
Well, and yes, and it's made me more and more value the perspective of who, not what, or excuse me, who, not how. Like, who is in a flow state when they do those things? Right? This is the Dan Sullivan concept from 10X. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I mean that one, right? She's showing me the book right now. For those of you not seeing it, like, yeah, that, like the value of acknowledging and getting better at identifying when there are people whose peak performance would be tapped into in arenas that you need to do, but you will never never is a strong word, but right, it is so far away for me to fall into a flow state in some of the functions. It is like, man, I really have to turn on a different game, which fortunately for me, the Who game is absolutely adjacent to my flow state. So
that's exactly what I was teaching the real estate company, was cool. That there's a lot of Who's that can be doing the things that you're not wanting to do, or you've reached a point of being like, wait a minute, this isn't really allowing me to access my genius area. So I need some Who's, but you don't know until you've reached that edge. And then once you let it go, then you create the pocket for the flow.
Yeah. And that pocket for the flow exists absolutely in leading the people who love being in the programs and systems and processes that I just could never get there from. So I appreciated you exploring that concept with me, and thank you for asking. I think that's probably where I tap my flow state the most, is working side by side with another person. We're verbally exploring or creating or asking and trying to figure out some problem that we're both interested in. That's where I fall into that flow state. Really.
And you've intentionally set it up so that you can do it as much as possible. Like, that's big brain brilliance.
Well, I'll take the compliment as a wonderful way to wrap up the episode. Thank you very much. And thanks for coming on, and thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it.
Sure thing. Thanks, Erik.
Thanks for joining us this week. Don't forget to take a second and subscribe. Maybe even share this episode with somebody it made you think of, or someone you think would take some value from it. This show is all about uncovering the brilliance and humanity of high performers. And whether those performers have a massive following, or a podcast, or a book, or they're a business owner, or they're buried somewhere in a corporation, or maybe they're a nonprofit leader, or they don't necessarily have to have a title. I'm really fascinated by people who are passionate and who are doing interesting things. So if you or somebody you know would be a good guest, don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or send me an email at hello@languageofleadership.io to make that connection. I'll see you next week.